Good afternoon and welcome to our presentation. Today is Tuesday, June 27th. I am Allison Johnston, a Professional Development Coordinator for Maryland's Developmental Disabilities Administration. We welcome you to the fourth event of our Tech Tuesday series. Today's session is entitled Enabling Technology and Inclusion, My Community and My Job. Before we begin, I would like to remind you of a few things about this webinar. All participants are in listen-only mode. This session is being recorded and will be available for future use. There is one handout for today's presentation, and it can be found in the handout section on the panel box. Questions can be typed in the question or chat box on the webinar panel, and we will get to those throughout the presentation. Now I'd like to turn this presentation over to our host, Stephanie Jones, Statewide Director of Innovation for GDA.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Again, today we have our speaker today is Harold Sloves. He is an innovation consultant for intellectual and developmental disability service systems and networks, entailing consulting and speaking engagements in multiple states. The focus of these engagements has been the paradigm shift toward integrating enabling technology supports as a primary option for people with intellectual disabilities. Today, Harold will be talking with us on a national view of increasing inclusion through technology for those that we serve. Harold, take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, everybody. Today is my fourth opportunity to speak during these Tech Tuesday events, so I'm thankful to be able to do that. So let's begin. Today I'm going to do a little bit of recap, take a look at some newer technologies that we've covered before, but this is going to look a little bit different. We're going to talk about technology in a different context. We focus so much on function and outcomes and work and skill development, that kind of thing. We're going to take a look at technology in a lighter environment where people are actually having fun. And so I thought that would open our eyes a little bit, because I think sometimes, and I include myself in this, by the way, we forget the importance of fun and recreation. So to begin, as Einstein said, and there's a lot of different ways to say this, in the midst of every crisis lays great opportunity. Crisis begets innovation, many different ways to express the same thoughts. But there was a technology first approach and movement that was underway early stages prior to the pandemic. But when the pandemic hit, obviously there was some acceleration, certainly an acceleration in states' interest and desire to get it going, which continues today. And of course, during the pandemic, if there are any providers in our audience, you understand there was a workforce crisis before the pandemic, and I was a provider during that period. When the pandemic hit, when COVID hit, it went off a cliff. Now, this is an important point I'd like to make with those of you who are concerned about staffing and DSPs, and that is simply this. In my judgment, in my view, it's not going to get back to where it used to be. I think many of us who are looking around at different industries and different sectors, there is a labor shortage universally, just about. So the notion that in our world that providers will get back to the same workforce levels as before the pandemic, I don't believe that's possible. And secondly, I'd like to just share this thought. In the past, states have tried to legislate workforce recruitment and retention strategies specifically through some targeted funding for DSP wages. I am of the opinion that that will not have a significant nor enduring impact on the workforce crisis. And what I'm also saying is that what we've been talking about for the last 3 sessions, and again today, I do believe that is an essential part of the workforce crisis solution. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is Maryland's remote supports waiver definition. I'm not going to go into great detail. You can find it online, I'm sure. I think the key is that, and we're going to get to this again in just a bit, the notion that there is off-site support. I think we need to think about, and again, as you go forward on your journey, who is off-site? There are, in fact, at least 3 options for who is providing those remote supports. Could it be a family member? Yeah, it could be. Could it be a staff member for a vendor? It could be that too. Or it could be a remote DSP from within a provider organization. All 3 of those are viable alternatives to who is on the other end of providing these remote supports, whether it's through sensor technology, audio, video, that kind of thing. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. So to follow up on my my previous comments, the dynamic between how much remote supports and paid supports are on site, it is not static. It depends. It depends on how the person's confidence with respect to what they're doing on a day-to-day basis in a technology-supported environment versus having somebody with them. Secondly, so again, it's not an all or nothing thing. Just because you can get a bunch of technology doesn't mean you should. There are a vast array of med dispenser systems, for example, and they have all sorts of capabilities, including being able to communicate remotely with a nurse if somebody has a PRN or as needed medication. And there are discs that are basic. But there's also an alarm on your smartphone that can remind you of taking when to take medication. It's about the person's needs and what their aspirations are. We have to be mindful that this is a person-centered process and that these technologies are another support option within the broader context of person-centered planning. That is absolutely vital. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, and I trust that's going to, okay. So often we see videos of a person who moves into a more independent living environment, living by themselves. I was struck that this is one of, not a lot of videos that show people who are sharing remote supports and have become friends. And so I'd like to play this with you now. Okay, thank you. I thought it went a little bit longer. Okay, before we begin the next video, I just want to highlight one comment which I thought was really, really important, and that is someone said, who has known them for a while, that they were previously living with family more independently than they did when they moved into a provider-supported setting that went from their lifestyle living with family to 24/7 supports, and now today they're living in an environment with what I would call intermittent supports. So again, this is, the use of technology is an opportunity to prevent the sort of conventional wisdom, which was somebody needs 24/7 out of the chute. That is absolutely not true. And this is a way to intervene and prevent that the trajectory of lifelong dependence, what I used to call getting waiverized. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so this was pretty cool. So in Tennessee, we created our very first tech camp. It was a collaboration with our vendors, our technology vendors, and the Y. And the whole notion of it was to introduce technologies to youngsters and their families in a fun environment, to engage them early and open the horizons of what's possible to them, but again in a camp environment. So this was our very first, just a really cool event, and again it shows people learning about technology in just in a fun environment. So if you would play it, please. Thank you. Thank you. That is so cool. So I hope there's an inspiration somewhere in there for those of you who are with us today. Okay, next slide, please. So I've talked about technology and using public transportation, bus transportation in particular before. This is going to help you to take a look at what happens behind the scenes. And by that I mean, so often, you know, we see these stories and videos about people using technology, but that's all we see. What we miss, which is really important, is that, you know, there's a whole other set of activities that occur before someone actually takes those steps toward independence, assessment and teaching and practice and all those kinds of things to maximize the possibility of success. So what you're about to see, and what's amazing about this is how long ago this happened. This is probably from, I would say, 2018. It's in Albuquerque. It's a provider organization in Albuquerque that launched this project in concert with AbleLink Technologies and their Wayfinder application. But this gives you the whole picture. Just as we see videos of people living more independently together, we have to remember that there's a human component to all this. There are people still in their lives. So let's take a look at this and you'll see what it takes to get to a new level of independence in traveling. If you would play this, please. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody notice how old that young man's phone was? That tells you how long this technology has been around. Yet I think we're just now focusing on its possibilities. Again, travel is just so uh, foundational for people's independence and freedom. And those who are living in some sort of supervised housing arrangement, uh, so many of whom are reliant on others to take them places they want to go. So finding transportation solutions via technology, I think, is absolutely vital. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So we're talking about the use of technology in different environments. And again, I think we need to remember on people's lives outside of work and cooking and daily living skills and that kind of thing. I think it's important to think about uh, families who want to travel together and take a family vacation, which can be very difficult and stressful if a family member is on the spectrum, uh, has other cognitive issues. The previous video talked about developing social skills. Well, there are new ways to do that, and there are new ways to overcome the anxieties and apprehensions of uh, new situations, including taking an airplane ride. Um, I will tell you, I get anxious when going through security. So those with other issues certainly experience that in a greater way. So our next video is going to be um, the use of virtual reality to help people prepare for a trip, desensitization, anticipation of different kinds of events along the way. Just so you know, sort of interesting that this particular video was developed in response to a competition. It was called Arc Tank. It was sponsored by an ARC in Massachusetts, and this was one of the award winners. So if you would play it, please. Thank you. Thank you. I was watching that. Something as simple as an escalator can trigger anxiety in people who are not accustomed to it. And of course, the sounds of the airport that many of us take for granted. So this was an application of virtual reality to help a family have a vacation. Again, something that we shouldn't take for granted. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to stay on the virtual reality track. This is really a fairly recent discovery for me. That Gesture Tech is out of Canada. And what you're going to see is the integration of physical rehabilitation with recreation and fun. Again, let's just take one step back for a moment and realize that really virtual reality in some ways is an extension of gaming, and people who enjoy playing these interactive games online, or even with games via VR, the industry has capitalized on that and come up with therapeutic opportunities for people. I thought this was really pretty cool, the way it incorporates, as I said, rehabilitation with having fun. So if you would, can we play the next one? Thank you.
Most kids love gaming. For kids battling serious illnesses, though, playing around is the last thing they usually get to do. But now, the Alberta Children's Hospital has found a way to combine therapy with entertainment. Tara Weber explains.
For 16-year-old Zachary Klenner, long hours of sometimes painful workouts and stretches are now rather fun.
Nice.
That it helps strengthen my arms, and that I don't focus as much on the physio aspect of therapy as I do on playing the game.
Klenner has cerebral palsy. For him, that means he has a curved spine and has difficulty bringing his hands and arms together. Now there's an app for that, sort of. The Alberta Children's Hospital has a virtual reality exercise system called the IREX. It helps patients get exercise in a new way.
There's a game called the Coconut Game where you use, for in my case, my arm motions to control a bucket that you have to catch the coconut in.
The IREX uses green screen technology to set the patient right into the game. The patient needs to wear something red in order for the cameras to pick up the movements.
You can see there on the screen that it's tracking the glove that he's wearing.
Well, for Zach, it's really excellent because we're actually working on a very specific motion. He was stuck in external rotation of his humerus. But if you can imagine, like, our whole therapy is focused on this, and that is pretty boring. So this way we can actually focus on, running games by doing internal rotation.
Another added benefit of the IREX system is it takes a patient who may be stuck in hospital, unable to get outside or unable to get outside easily, to the mountains or the soccer pitch.
It puts the patient in a virtual world, which of course teenagers like Zach are very comfortable with. The computers, the technology, all the gizmos.
And while they play, it tests for and builds balance, mobility, and endurance.
I feel like you go to your face, but you can feel it in your muscles.
Yeah.
It may look like fun and games, but for patients like Zach, a whole new world is now within arm's reach. Tara Weber, CBC News, Calgary.
Thank you. So many possibilities with virtual reality. So I thought I wanted to share this this new opportunity and option with the group today. Okay, next slide, please. All right, we're hitting the home stretch of our time together today. So I'd like to just take a look at some of the characteristics of what a technology-first service delivery system looks like. And I'd like to just highlight a couple or a few on this particular slide. And I think more than anything, and as I said, we want to put the person first and the technology as an available option. But that is sort of the key to the whole thing. We have to stop thinking about technology as something separate, as something novel and unique. Our thinking has to become, these technologies are another support option that are available to people. And that it is just part of the standard person-centered planning process. Payment for enabling technology is going to be absolutely vital for providers to remain engaged. And it needs to be discernible, it needs to be fair, it needs to be equitable, and also incentivizing for providers to go down this particular path. I learned early and hard that education is never ending. Education, marketing, and communication is ongoing. And when you think you're done, think again. We've talked about the workforce. When enabling technology is used in a person-centered and thoughtful way, there are all sorts of great possibilities. This is one of those fantastic win-win opportunities where people achieve a new level of independence, and providers can also succeed as well in terms of managing their workforce issues and also some of the financial strains that are imposed by a workforce crisis. We have to be aligned. We have to be aligned. Case management, support coordination, families, providers, the state agency need to be talking the same language and be on the same path and agree on the process in which people can access technology. Next slide, please. One of the, and we did this to some degree in Tennessee, and I'm talking to other states about this as well, and that is, one of the ideals is that those providers who are progressive and on board and early adopters, not only can they support each other with problem solving and new ways of thinking, but they can also extend their mentoring to other providers who might be on the sidelines watching, and to engage them in the process. That internalizes, that integrates this change process, this movement. As I mentioned earlier, a little technology can make a huge difference in somebody's life. We cannot forget about people with physical disabilities and how technology can give them greater control over their environment. And I think that's pretty much all the key elements. This last point, and I'm going to repeat it on another slide very soon, is that these technologies are for the person using them. It is not meant to be a provider convenience. Next slide, please. I want to hit this pretty hard. Okay, as I said, learn. There are technology vendors with a national footprint who would be thrilled to be talking with you and tell you about what they do, how these devices work, how they're maintained, upgraded, how they interact, and all the possibilities. This is why I say you don't have to be a technologist to be successful. You just have to listen to people. Education, marketing, and communication. There are a number of states who have created waivers that include remote supports and enabling technology, and it's just not used because there wasn't a preceding comprehensive strategic plan to communicate and educate the state's constituents. Leadership matters. Really big deal, and I learned this the hard way as well. Leadership within an organization, provider organization, means more than just saying, let me know how it's going, keep me posted. What leadership matters means you have to walk the walk, and that means being actively and visibly engaged. Leadership will be watched as provider organizations go down this road, the level of engagement, support, and communication proactively. Internal catalysts are absolutely vital. There has to be somebody within the organization who's going to facilitate change. And again, we're not just talking about adding technology as an option for people. We're really talking about culture change, paradigm change, a new way of looking at the possibilities. And as I said earlier, integrating these technologies as a conventional option for people, where there's a dynamic relationship between these technologies and paid support. Words matter. So this is one of those places where the great state of Maryland and I are not really on the same page. I don't want to overdo that, but what I will say is Ohio, which was one of the national leaders in the technology first movement, began with a waiver the waiver itself was called remote monitoring. And after a while, they pulled it and changed their terminology, their language, to remote supports. Why? Because the person who was running the show at the time basically said people saw that term as too much like Big Brother. Providers were apprehensive about it because they thought it was just a way to catch them doing something. And fundamentally, my belief is simply that monitoring is a provider function, and the technology is for the people using it. And I think it's a slippery slope when we start talking about technology as a supervisory function rather than as an enabling function. Okay, last slide. I think we might be at the home stretch. And let us end it with Brad. This is a really great story about his family and how he ended up having his own place. This was on the Tennessee Department's Facebook page. And I mean, in our world, it went viral, tens of thousands of views and shares. It was international. It struck a chord. It struck a chord. So I thought this would be an uplifting way to end our time together. If you would play it, please. Wow. Very cool. Well, I believe if we look at the last slide, that will bring us to the end of our time together today. I hope what you have seen today, and perhaps other times that you've been with us on Tech Tuesday, that these are not simply events, but that they are springboards to go forward. So I just want to say thank you for your time, and I'm really privileged to have been able to do this with you. Thank you. Stephanie, all yours.
All right. Thank you, Harold. We have so enjoyed your presentation and all the cool stuff that you've shown us for increasing inclusion for people with developmental disabilities across all settings. We don't have any questions in our question box or our chat box that I'm seeing right now. Give it 1 second. While I'm giving it a second, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, letting you know that next month, everyone is welcome, but our focus will be on what being a provider in a technology-first state is like. We will hear from Shift as well as our internal provider relations on how that looks in Maryland, as well as what it looks like nationally. So I hope everyone joins us and tunes in for next month. There's still no questions, so I'm going to wish everyone well and have a safe and happy 4th of July weekend. Thank you, Harold. And thank you, Allison, for all your help.
Yeah, thank you, Allison.
And we got to thank you from someone.